Have you ever noticed how one sentence can completely change someone's day? A careless remark, a sarcastic comment, a stranger's opinion online, a friend's criticism, a family member questioning your choices. Sometimes it's not even what was said, it's how it was said. Suddenly, your mood changes, your heart beats faster, your mind begins replaying the conversation over and over again. You think of the perfect response, hours too late. You wonder why they said it. You question whether they respect you. You even begin questioning yourself. Now ask yourself something deeper. Why do a few words from another person have so much power over your emotions? This is a question the Stoics asked more than 2,000 years ago, and the answer they discovered has the power to transform the way you experience life. Because the truth is this: people don't control your emotions nearly as much as you think they do. What truly controls you is the meaning you give to their words. Think about that for a moment. Imagine two people hearing the exact same insult. One laughs and walks away. The other spends the next 3 days thinking about it. The words were identical. The reaction was completely different. Why? Because the insult itself wasn't the deciding factor. The interpretation was. This is one of the most powerful foundations of Stoicism. Events don't automatically disturb us. Our judgment about those events does. Yet most people never stop long enough to notice this. Instead, they assume they made me angry. They hurt my feelings. They ruined my day. The Stoics would gently challenge that belief. Did they truly ruin your day? Or did your response give them permission to? At first, this idea can feel uncomfortable because it shifts responsibility away from other people and places it back into your own hands. But that's exactly why it's so liberating. If someone else controls your emotions, then your peace depends on their behavior. And that means you'll never truly be free. Think about how many people unknowingly live this way. They wake up feeling fine. Then one negative comment changes everything. One disagreement destroys their confidence. One criticism makes them question their worth. One rude driver ruins the entire morning. By the end of the day, dozens of strangers have influenced their emotional state. Without realizing it, they allowed the outside world to become the ruler of their inner world. The Stoics refuse to live like this. Not because they never encountered rude people. Far from it. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of the largest empires in history. Every decision he made was criticized by someone. Some believed he was too kind. Others believed he was too harsh. Some admired him. Others despised him. Imagine carrying that burden every single day. If Marcus had allowed every opinion to disturb him, he would have spent his entire reign reacting instead of leading. Instead, he reminded himself of a simple truth. Other people's opinions belong to them. Your character belongs to you. That distinction changes everything. Imagine walking through a crowded marketplace. People are shouting from every direction. Some are selling food. Some are arguing. Some are laughing. Some are complaining. Would you stop to respond to every voice you hear? Of course not. You continue walking because you know not every voice deserves your attention. The Stoics believed your mind should work the same way. Not every opinion deserves a place in your thoughts. Not every criticism deserves an emotional reaction. Not every insult deserves your energy. Attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. Where you place it determines the quality of your life. Now, consider something else. Why do insults hurt at all? The answer is surprisingly simple. Because they often touch something we're already uncertain about. Imagine someone calling you by the wrong name. Would you feel deeply offended? Probably not. Why? Because you know it's untrue. You don't need to defend reality. But imagine someone criticizes an area where you already feel insecure. Suddenly, the words carry weight. Not because they're necessarily true, but because they awaken a fear that already existed. The Stoics understood this. They believed that offense often reveals more about our own inner struggles than about the person speaking. That's why criticism can become a teacher. Not every criticism is accurate, but every criticism invites reflection. Ask yourself, why did this bother me so much? Not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself. Perhaps it exposed an insecurity. Perhaps it challenged your pride. Perhaps it reminded you of an old wound. Self-awareness transforms emotional reactions into opportunities for growth. Imagine standing before a mirror. The mirror doesn't create imperfections. It simply reveals what already exists. Offense often works the same way. It reflects parts of ourselves we haven't yet fully accepted. The Stoics welcomed this kind of reflection, not because they enjoyed criticism, because they valued truth more than comfort. Epictetus, who spent part of his life as a slave, understood insults better than most. He encountered people who looked down on him, people who judged him because of his status, people who dismissed his worth before hearing his wisdom. Yet he asked a remarkable question. If someone insults you based on something false, why become upset? If they call you something you're not, they've misunderstood reality. Reality hasn't changed. And if they criticize something true, shouldn't you simply improve it? Either way, anger accomplishes very little. Think about how much energy people spend defending themselves. Hours replaying conversations, days holding grudges, weeks imagining revenge, months avoiding someone because of one unpleasant interaction, years carrying resentment. Imagine placing a pebble in your pocket every time someone offended you. At first, it feels insignificant, but after years of collecting them, the weight becomes unbearable. Many people carry emotional pockets filled with old insults, old disappointments, old arguments, old resentments. The Stoics encourage something different. Put the pebble down, not because the experience didn't matter, because carrying it forever only harms you. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Stoicism is that it teaches people not to care. That's not true. The Stoics cared deeply. They cared about justice, about virtue, about kindness, about wisdom, but they refused to let their emotions become prisoners of other people's behavior. Imagine someone throws mud at a clear lake. The water becomes cloudy for a moment, but if the lake remains still, eventually the mud settles. The water becomes clear again. Now imagine the lake fighting the mud, stirring itself violently. The water remains cloudy much longer. Your mind works exactly the same way. When someone insults you, you have two choices: react immediately or allow the disturbance to settle. Most emotional suffering comes from stirring the water ourselves. We replay the conversation. We imagine clever responses. We tell 10 other people about it. We revisit it before going to sleep. The original event lasted 30 seconds. Our thoughts extended for 30 days. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every person acts according to what they believe is right, even those who behave badly. Think about that. The person who insults you usually doesn't wake up thinking, "Today I'll become the villain in someone else's story." More often, they're acting from their own pain, their own fears, their own ignorance, their own frustration. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it changes how you respond to it. Imagine being barked at by a frightened dog. Would you spend the rest of the week feeling personally attacked? Probably not. You'd recognize that the dog's behavior reflects its condition, not your worth. People often behave similarly. Someone overwhelmed by anger sees enemies everywhere. Someone consumed by jealousy criticizes constantly. Someone filled with insecurity often tries to make others feel small. Their behavior says far more about their inner world than about yours. The Stoics refuse to confuse another person's character with their own value. There's another reason people become easily offended. Pride. Pride quietly whispers, "How dare they speak to me that way? They should know who I am. I deserve better." The Stoics recognize pride as one of the most dangerous emotional traps, because pride constantly seeks validation. It demands respect. It expects recognition. And whenever reality fails to meet those expectations, offense appears. Humility works differently. Humility doesn't think less of itself. It simply spends less time thinking about itself. Imagine walking through life without constantly measuring how every interaction affects your ego. How peaceful would that feel? Not every disagreement becomes personal. Not every criticism becomes an attack. Not every rude comment becomes a crisis. The world suddenly becomes much quieter because your ego is no longer translating every inconvenience into an emergency. This is why the Stoics valued humility so deeply, not because it made people passive, Because it made them free. Free from the exhausting need to defend themselves at every opportunity. Free from constant emotional turbulence. Free from living at the mercy of every opinion they encountered. By now, you may be beginning to realize something important. The goal isn't to stop people from offending you. That's impossible. There will always be rude people, careless people, impatient people, critical people. You cannot control them. But you can become the kind of person whose peace is no longer determined by them. That is where true strength begins. Not when the world becomes kinder, but when your mind becomes steadier. The Stoic mindset that makes you impossible to offend. Imagine someone walks up to you and says, "You're 7 feet tall." Would you argue? Would you feel insulted? Would you spend the rest of the day trying to prove them wrong? Of course not. You'd probably smile and continue walking. Why? Because you know the statement isn't true. You don't feel the need to defend reality. Now imagine someone says something that touches one of your deepest insecurities. Suddenly, everything changes. Your heartbeat quickens. Your mind begins preparing a defense. You replay the words again and again. The Stoics notice something remarkable about this difference. They realize that an insult only becomes powerful when your mind agrees to carry it. The words themselves have no lasting force. Your judgment gives them that force. This was one of Epictetus' greatest teachings. He reminded his students that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. That simple idea changes everything, because it means your emotional freedom does not depend on changing other people. It depends on mastering your own perception. Think about how empowering that is. If someone praises you, you remain steady. If someone criticizes you, you remain steady. If someone misunderstands you, you remain steady. Not because you don't care, because you stop allowing every opinion to determine your inner peace. Imagine your mind as a castle. A strong castle isn't protected because enemies stop appearing. It's protected because the gates are wisely guarded. Every day, countless opinions knock on the door of your mind. Some deserve entry. Many do not. The problem is that most people leave the gates wide open. Every insult enters. Every criticism settles in. Every rumor finds a place to live. Soon, the castle becomes crowded with voices that were never invited. The Stoics believed wisdom meant becoming the gatekeeper. Before accepting any opinion, ask yourself, is this true? If the answer is no, why carry it? If the answer is yes, why become offended? Simply improve. Either way, emotional suffering becomes unnecessary. This mindset sounds simple. Living it requires discipline, because your ego will constantly try to convince you otherwise. The ego wants to win every argument. The ego wants everyone to agree. The ego wants the last word. But wisdom asks a different question. What is gained by reacting? Imagine someone throwing a spark toward a dry forest. One careless reaction can start a wildfire. Now imagine that same spark landing on calm water. It disappears instantly. The difference isn't the spark. It's what the spark lands upon. Your mind can become like that calm water. Insults lose their power when they find nothing inside you willing to feed them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every single day. As emperor, he could have punished people who insulted him. He had the authority. He had the power. Yet again and again, he chose restraint. Why? Because he understood something that many powerful people forget. Reacting emotionally doesn't demonstrate strength. It reveals dependency. If another person's words can control your emotions, then for that moment, they are controlling you. Marcus refused to hand over that kind of power. Instead, he focused on the only thing that truly belonged to him, his own character. Think about how much of your life becomes easier when you adopt this perspective. Someone criticizes your work. Instead of asking, how do I prove them wrong? You ask, is there anything useful I can learn? Someone mocks your ambition. Instead of becoming discouraged, you remind yourself that every meaningful path attracts doubters. Someone misunderstands your intentions. Instead of exhausting yourself with endless explanations, you continue acting with integrity. Over time, your consistency becomes your answer. This is one of the Stoics' greatest secrets. Let time defend your character. Many people desperately try to protect their reputation through words. The Stoics protected it through actions. Words create impressions. Actions create trust. Trust always lasts longer. Imagine planting an apple tree. Would you stand beside it every day telling people, "Trust me, this tree will produce fruit"? Or would you simply care for it patiently? Eventually, the fruit speaks for itself. Your life works the same way. You don't have to convince everyone that you're honest. Live honestly. You don't have to announce your discipline. Practice discipline. You don't have to explain your strength. Remain steady when life becomes difficult. Eventually, people stop listening to what you say. They begin watching how you live. And that is far more powerful. Another Stoic principle that makes offense lose its grip is remembering how little control you have over other people's thoughts. This may sound discouraging. In reality, it's incredibly freeing. Imagine trying to control the wind. You become frustrated because it refuses to obey. Now imagine accepting that the wind has its own nature. Suddenly, your energy shifts. Instead of controlling the wind, you learn to adjust your sails. Other people's opinions are the same. You cannot force understanding. You cannot force respect. You cannot force agreement. You can only decide how you respond. The Stoics believed this shift in focus was the beginning of wisdom. There is another truth that many people avoid. Sometimes criticism contains something valuable. Not always, but sometimes. The average person rejects criticism immediately because it hurts. The Stoic pauses before reacting. They ask, "Is there even one small part of this that can help me grow?" Imagine receiving a rough piece of stone. At first glance, it looks ordinary, but hidden inside is a valuable gem. Most people throw the stone away because of its appearance. The Stoic examines it carefully. Even criticism delivered poorly can contain useful insight. If someone points out a genuine weakness, be grateful. Now you know what to improve. If they're completely wrong, be grateful. Now you've practiced patience. Either way, you've gained something. That mindset makes you nearly impossible to offend, because every situation becomes an opportunity rather than injury. Seneca once observed that anger often punishes us more than the original offense. Think about that carefully. Someone insults you for 10 seconds. Then you replay it for 10 hours. Who extended your suffering? Not them. Your own thoughts did. This is why the Stoics became masters of letting go. Not because forgetting is easy, because carrying unnecessary burdens is exhausting. Imagine climbing a mountain with a backpack full of rocks. Every grudge is another rock. Every insult is another rock. Every old argument is another rock. Eventually, the climb feels impossible. Then someone asks, "Why don't you put the backpack down?" The answer is surprisingly difficult, because many people become attached to their pain. They replay it so often that it becomes part of their identity. The Stoics refuse to build identities around old wounds. They built identities around present choices. Your past doesn't have to become your personality. Today's decision matters far more. There's also a profound difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance reacts defensively because it constantly feels threatened. Confidence doesn't. Imagine a lion walking through the forest. Does it stop every time a bird chirps? Does it argue with every smaller animal? No. Its strength doesn't require constant proof. Likewise, genuine confidence doesn't feel obligated to answer every criticism. It remains focused on what truly matters. The Stoics admired this quiet strength, not loud pride, not dramatic displays. Steady confidence rooted in virtue. One of the greatest emotional traps today is believing that every opinion deserves equal importance. It doesn't. Would you ask a stranger to make every important decision in your life? Probably not. So why allow random opinions to determine your emotional state? The Stoics believe respect should be earned before influence is granted. Value the advice of people who know your character, who genuinely want your growth, who speak with wisdom. But don't hand the same authority to every passing voice. That single habit can transform your peace of mind. By now, you may notice something changing. The more secure you become within yourself, the less desperate you become for external approval. The less approval you need, the less criticism hurts. The less criticism hurts, the freer you become. This is not emotional numbness. It's emotional maturity. It allows you to walk through life with calm instead of constant defensiveness, to listen without immediately reacting, to learn without becoming ashamed, to disagree without becoming angry, to remain respectful without surrendering your convictions. This is what made the Stoics so remarkably resilient, not because they lived in an easy world. They certainly didn't. But because they understood that true power begins the moment you stop allowing other people's words to determine your inner state. Become emotionally unshakable. The Stoic way. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with a quiet promise to yourself. No matter what happens today, no matter who criticizes you, no matter who misunderstands you, no matter how many unexpected problems appear, you will not allow another person to steal your peace. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you decided that your inner world is too valuable to hand over so easily. Imagine how different your life would become. Someone speaks harshly to you. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. Someone doubts your abilities. Instead of defending yourself, you continue improving. Someone tries to provoke you. Instead of giving them the satisfaction of an emotional reaction, you remain calm. That kind of composure isn't weakness. It's one of the greatest forms of strength a human being can develop. The Stoics believe that every day offered a choice. You could become a mirror, reflecting every emotion thrown at you, or you could become a lighthouse, standing firm while the storms pass around you. Most people live like mirrors. Someone smiles, they smile. Someone insults them, their mood collapses. Someone praises them, their confidence rises. Someone ignores them, their confidence disappears. Their emotional life becomes a reflection of everyone else's behavior. The Stoics chose to become lighthouses, steady, reliable, grounded, not because the waves stopped crashing against them, because they built their foundations on something stronger than public opinion. Now the question becomes, how do you actually develop that kind of mind? The answer isn't found in one dramatic moment. It's built through small daily practices. Let's begin with the first. Practice 1. Create space before you respond. Every emotional reaction begins with a single moment. Someone says something hurtful. A message appears on your phone. An unexpected criticism arrives. In that instant, your emotions want to take control. They whisper, "Respond now. Defend yourself." Don't let them get away with that. The Stoics trained themselves to do something remarkably simple. Nothing, at least not immediately. They paused. That pause became the birthplace of wisdom. Imagine an archer aiming at a target. Would they release the arrow the instant they touched the bow? No. They steady themselves first. They breathe. They focus. Only then do they act. Your words deserve the same care. One deep breath may prevent an argument you'll regret for years. One moment of silence may preserve a relationship. One thoughtful pause may save your peace. Remember, the first emotional impulse is rarely your wisest response. Wisdom usually arrives a few moments later, if you give it the opportunity. Practice 2. Separate facts from stories. This habit alone can transform your life. Imagine someone walks past you without saying hello. Immediately, your mind begins creating stories. They're angry with me. They don't respect me. I must have done something wrong. Hours later, you discover they simply didn't see you. Nothing actually happened. Only your imagination did. The Stoics constantly challenged these invisible stories. Whenever strong emotions appeared, they asked, "Where are the facts?" Not the assumptions, not the fears, not the worst-case scenario. Just reality. Facts create clarity. Stories often create suffering. The next time you're offended, ask yourself, what actually happened? Then ask, what story am I adding? You'll be surprised how often the second question reveals the real source of your pain. Practice 3. Stop borrowing other people's problems. One of the greatest emotional burdens people carry isn't even their own. It's everyone else's. Someone is rude. You carry their anger all day. Someone is jealous. You begin questioning yourself. Someone is impatient. You feel guilty. The Stoics recognize that every person carries their own inner battles, their fears, their disappointments, their habits, their wounds. Much of what people say and do comes from those unseen struggles. Imagine someone carrying a heavy bucket of muddy water. As they walk past you, some of it splashes onto your clothes. Do you become angry with the mud? Or do you recognize where it came from? People often spill what's already inside them. An angry person spreads anger. A fearful person spreads fear. A peaceful person spreads peace. You don't have to carry what someone else spills. You can acknowledge it and leave it where it belongs. Practice 4. Strengthen your inner voice. Many people are devastated by criticism because their inner voice is already harsh. When someone says, "You're not good enough," it hurts because they've heard that sentence inside their own mind for years. The Stoics believed that before you could become emotionally resilient, you had to become your own wise companion. Imagine speaking to yourself the way Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, not with endless praise, not with harsh judgment, but with calm honesty. Instead of saying, "I'm a failure," say, "I made a mistake. Now I'll learn from it." Instead of, "Everyone is against me," say, "I cannot control their opinions. I can control my actions." Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" say, "This is another opportunity to practice patience." Your inner dialogue quietly becomes your emotional foundation. Strengthen it daily. Practice 5. Remember how short life is. This may be the most powerful Stoic practice of all. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on the shortness of life, not because he feared death, because remembering life's brevity helped him focus on what truly mattered. Imagine reaching the end of your life. Do you think you'll regret not winning every argument? Will you wish you'd spent more time defending yourself to strangers? Will you wish you'd carried more resentment? Probably not. You'll likely wish you'd loved more deeply, laughed more often, spent more time with people who mattered, pursued meaningful work, protected your peace. The awareness that life is temporary changes your priorities. Suddenly, a rude comment doesn't seem so important. An online argument loses its appeal. The need to prove yourself begins to fade, because your time becomes too valuable to waste. The freedom of letting go. There comes a moment in every Stoic's journey when something remarkable happens. You stop asking, "How do I stop people from offending me?" And you begin asking, "Why am I giving them this much power?" That single question changes everything, because it returns responsibility to where it belongs, inside yourself. You begin realizing that peace isn't something other people give you. It's something you protect. Imagine holding a candle during a windy night. You don't blame the wind for existing. You simply shield the flame. Your inner peace is that flame. The world will always contain criticism, conflict, misunderstanding, disrespect. You cannot eliminate the wind, but you can learn to protect the light. The quiet confidence of the Stoics. Have you ever met someone who never seems rushed to defend themselves? Someone who doesn't become offended by every opinion? Someone who listens more than they speak? Someone who remains calm while everyone else becomes emotional? People often assume they were simply born that way. The Stoics would disagree. They became that way through practice, through countless invisible victories. Every insult they refused to carry. Every argument they chose not to join. Every criticism they examined calmly instead of emotionally. Every day they chose reason over impulse. That's how emotional strength is built, not through grand gestures, but through ordinary moments handled with extraordinary wisdom. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. The metal is heated, hammered, folded, again and again. Without the pressure, the blade remains weak. Your difficult experiences work the same way. Every criticism gives you a chance to practice humility. Every insult gives you a chance to practice self-control. Every misunderstanding gives you a chance to practice patience. What once felt like attacks become opportunities. Suddenly, life itself becomes your teacher. A final story. Imagine two travelers walking through a forest. As they pass beneath a tree, one of them is struck by a falling branch. He becomes furious. He yells at the tree. He curses the forest. He spends the rest of the journey replaying the moment. The second traveler is struck by a branch as well. He steps back, looks at the broken limb, realizes the wind caused it to fall, then continues walking. Both were hit. Only one continued carrying the weight. Life often works the same way. People will disappoint you. Some will criticize you unfairly. Some will misunderstand your intentions. Some will speak carelessly. These things are part of being human. The Stoics never expected the forest to stop dropping branches. They simply learned not to carry every branch with them. The greatest secret. So, what is the secret to never being easily offended? It isn't becoming emotionless. It isn't pretending words don't hurt. It isn't refusing to care. The real secret is much simpler. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's opinion. You stop giving strangers authority over your peace. You stop allowing every careless word to become a permanent wound. Instead, you build a character so rooted in wisdom that criticism becomes information, not identity. You become someone who listens without immediately reacting, learns without becoming defensive, forgives without becoming weak, and walks away without needing the last word. That is true emotional freedom, not because the world changed, because you did. A challenge for you. For the next 7 days, practice one simple exercise. Whenever someone says something that would normally offend you, don't respond immediately. Pause. Take one slow breath. Then silently ask yourself, does this deserve my peace? If the answer is no, let it go. You may discover that many of the battles you've been fighting never needed to be fought at all, because not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves your memory, and not every disagreement deserves your emotional energy. Remember this timeless Stoic truth. No one can insult your character unless you abandon it yourself. Protect your peace. Guard your mind. Live according to your values. And you'll discover what the Stoics understood centuries ago. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who remains calm when everyone else loses control. If this message resonated with you, leave the word calm in the comments as a reminder that true strength begins within. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more timeless lessons from Stoic philosophy. Until next time, remember, the world will always test your peace, but only you decide whether to give it away.